Hey, I'm Noelle Peckus-Pace.
And I'm Jansen Pace.
And today we're going to talk about what are the steps to help us get our goals and to help children and youth get their goals. So let's dive in. Sound good?
Awesome.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So believe it or not, there are actually guidelines or rules or a strategy to help you get your goals in a more efficient way. So just like a board game, pull the board game.
This one. Life, right?
So what about a board game?
Yeah. So in order to play this game, if you just picked it up for the first time, kind of like we're doing with some of the children and youth goal stuff, it's really kind of complicated, right? You open it up and
Where do you go?
front and back, right?
How do I play?
All sorts of rules. You got to read through this in order to really understand how this game works and what is taking place.
Setting goals and getting a goal and helping youth to understand the best way to get their goals is similar to understanding guidelines or rules to playing a game. So if you think about goal setting as playing a game, it becomes more fun and exciting and you can follow the rules. And the first time you do it, it's a little bit tricky, but the more you do it, the more you can say, okay, I don't need the rules. I've already played this game before. I know how to do this and I know what the next steps are. So in order to get goals, there are 4 basic steps that we highly recommend, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints recommends the same pattern for growth. And these steps are, what are they?
First is discover, plan, act, and reflect. Those are the 4 steps, and they go in that order.
Awesome. So if you want to help your children and youth set and get their goals, you'll want to listen to this. The first place to begin is to discover. And that means that you just get out a piece of paper, get out a notepad, get out something where they can just write down everything that they want to learn, everything they want to do, anything they think would be cool to understand more of. Just let them go to town with it and write down all of their ideas. Let them discover the things that interest them. So we tried this with our kids, and we're going to show you an example of something that our 8-year-old did. We did it with him, so parent involvement is huge, it's key. But we had him write down everything and anything that he was interested in. And for us, we set a goal for him to write down 20 things. We said, let's see if you can write down 20 things on here that you are interested in. And this is what he did. We told him not to worry about spelling, not to worry about any of those little details. We just wanted him to get it down on paper.
So the first time he did this was actually just on a regular piece of paper, and it was probably a week or 2 before this, and it kind of got shuffled aside a little bit, or maybe he forgot about it. And so we had this big roll laying out. We just said, hey, pull it out. Let's see what he can do.
So he wrote down guitar, origami. We didn't know he wanted to do origami.
Soccer.
Gymnastics, breakdancing. We had no clue that that was something that was interesting to him. I was actually like this close to signing him up for baseball for the spring because I thought that's what he was interested in. And as he wrote down over 20 things, baseball wasn't even on this list. So I was thinking, oh my goodness, my goals for him as a parent are actually different than his goals for himself. So this was very eye-opening for us as parents to say, oh, this is really good and helpful for us to be able to align our goals and his goals so that we can help him achieve what he wants to achieve so that we're not trying to go in different directions. He has science on here, flag football, hip hop. I didn't even know he wanted to do hip hop. Hockey, skiing, track and field. So he wrote down about 20 things. And once he did this, we said, okay, let's narrow it down because that's a lot of things. So instead of just saying, okay, pick your best ones, pick your top ones, what did he do when we said, pick your top 10? What did he do?
He kind of got stuck. He circled like 3.
He didn't know.
And didn't really know what to do.
So it took guidance.
He actually had a tough time, once he started writing these, we had to kind of ask questions and probe a little bit to say, well, what about this? Would you like doing this? Does this make you happy?
And we started comparing. We started saying, okay, so if you had to choose between, let's say we said, if you had to pick between gymnastics and breakdancing, what would you do? And he's like, breakdancing. And we're like, okay, so we circled breakdancing. And then we're like, okay, if you had to pick between drawing and Legos, what would you do? And he's like, Legos. So he just kind of started narrowing it down. And then the next day, all of a sudden he came home from school without us even ever asking him, just because he had kind of written down some ideas. He's like, I can do these things. I didn't know I was able to do these things. And all on his home, he came home from school that afternoon. And
he pulled out some paper, and next thing I know, I see him, with the big paper cutter on the table, and he's like, how do I cut a 3.5 inch? Where's 3.5 inches on here? And I'm all, okay, what are you doing? And he was trying to measure a 3.5 inch square to cut some papers to do origami.
Yeah.
And so all on his own, he pulls out the paper, he starts cutting it, measuring it. And he was using...
He got on YouTube channel.
Yeah, he got on YouTube and started looking at...
Started folding paper.
Things that he wanted to fold, little Chinese stars, and
then he started giving them away to his friends the next day. We're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even know, and he didn't know until he had written it down. He's like, oh, I want to do that sounds fun. I want to do paper folding. Some of it we actually had to just kind of give him ideas, like, oh, would you want to do break? Like we actually suggested, would you like to try breakdancing? He's like, what's that? So we actually got on YouTube and said, okay, this is breakdancing. This is a 10-year-old boy doing breakdancing, and he's like, holy cow, that's so cool. And then we're like, would you like to do? We brought up a couple things. He's like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. And all of a sudden he'd see something else. He's like, yeah, that looks fun. So some of it was just us kind of throwing out ideas, but he started doing it all on his own. So let your kids discover. Get it down on paper. Just let them go to town, write things down, and let them be creative. Help them to discover some ideas.
Yeah, this is actually a really neat process, and it's probably one of the most important things to have your child get ownership in what they're doing. To really see, hey, what is it that I love doing, and what do I want to spend my time working on, so that I'm not doing what mom wants me to do when I really don't care about baseball or whatever it is.
It's so true. And once in a while I'm like, actually no, like he's still sticking in piano because we feel like a musical instrument is really useful, and so
piano was like 18th on his list.
I made him,
but then he decided to circle it on his own.
He did between 1 and 2 objects. He actually did. So, but all right. So step number 2. So after you have discovered or allow your kids to discover, step number 2 is to plan. And the planning process, that's probably where it takes the most time, is you're planning and you're saying, okay, so who can help me? What resources do I need? What do I need to gather? When will I be doing this? Or do I need to go to a location? Who can I ask? It's just all the what, where, how am I going to put this together? And once you find someone that can help you, for Trace and for origami, it was just looking up online and finding something on YouTube. It could be something as simple as that, but for what he needed, as you noticed, you're like, oh, he's cutting, using construction paper, and he was trying to make like a ninja star or something. And it was
the paper, construction paper is not easy to use. You can't fold it or crease it really well. And
he was getting frustrated because it wasn't staying in place. And we were like, oh, this could be discouraging to kids if they're trying to do something and they don't have the resources they need. It's frustrating for us as parents if we're trying to do something and we don't have the resources. So what do we need to do? We need to try and get those right resources, the things that will help us to achieve the most in the littlest amount of time. So we ended up getting some origami paper for him, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is like working so much better, and it's flat and it's creased, and it's like,
and he was able to fold so many more, so much faster, and it kind of kept his spirits up with his whole goal of trying to learn origami.
He's been so excited. He's been passing them out to friends and things at school, and they've been excited. And he had some friends over the other day, and they're like, holy cow, how'd you learn that? He's like, this is my goal. And then awesome Tracy turned to one of his friends and he's like, what's your goal?
Whoa! What is your goal? Excuse me.
But it was fun to hear them have a conversation as 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds saying, what's your goal? What are you working on? And it just, without us even saying anything, it was a lot of fun. So plan ahead. So plan. Just help them gather resources, ask them who can help, and help provide a way to open that path. Yeah. Bless you.
Bless me.
Blessings.
Wow.
All right, what's step number 3?
Step 3 is act. This is the part where you get dirty, right? You put your shoulder to the wheel and start doing. Acting is taking what you've discovered, taking what you've just planned, and actually going out and doing it. And for a parent, one of the biggest things with acting is actually setting an example, doing something that your kids can follow. As they see us taking steps and picking goals of our own, they will want to follow us and say, hey, look, oh wow, look, you guys are doing handstands, or you guys are learning to juggle. And after a few days or a week, they're just starting to say, what am I doing? I want to do something, and it might not be the same thing that you're doing, but they'll start wanting to do something and they'll start acting on it. It's
pretty awesome to see. And the Children and Youth program isn't just for children and youth. It's not supposed to be all on the leaders' shoulders at all. This is a church-centered program. Family-centered program, church-supported. So family-centered means it comes from home. Effort program, children and youth. I don't know what goes after that, but children and youth. So it's meant to be that the parents are going to be there by their sides, and it takes a lot of time. So are you willing to put in that time? Well, you're listening to this, so I think maybe a little bit, right?
And the thing with ACT is to make sure that you're consistent. So if your child starts doing this, maybe they do it once or twice and they get discouraged because they don't have the right paper or they don't have the right ball, whatever it is that they're doing. I think as a parent, it's our responsibility to step in and say, okay, why aren't you doing your goal anymore? What happened? Kind of being aware of where they're at. And
I couldn't figure it out. I just couldn't do it. Well, why couldn't you?
It wasn't fun anymore. Or, well, why wasn't it fun? Start asking questions and try and figure it out so they can at least hit that little goal that they've set.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of times with goal setting, we just naturally want to jump straight into act, right? And we're taught, I will go and do. Well, Nephi had a plan as well. We need to have a plan. We need to know the direction. We need to have resources in place. And a lot of times we skip the discover, we skip the plan, and we're just like, I want to get fit. All right, I'm going to the gym. Here I go. And instead of actually thinking through the process, okay, is this the best way I can do it? I think it was Abraham Lincoln that said something along the lines of, if you ask me to chop down a tree, I will take 4 hours to sharpen my axe. If you give me 5 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to take 4 hours to sharpen my axe. And it's something along those lines. Don't quote me on that.
I think it was 6 hours.
It was probably
who's
6.
counting?
Yeah, probably 6. But the point is that you take time to prepare, you take time to plan, you take time to discover, and now you get to act. And the acting period is going to be intentional. It's going to be very deliberate, which it makes all the difference in the world. So,
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Help your kids to be accountable and set an example for them. Let them see that you're setting goals for yourself too, and let them see how you're learning and growing, and that it's not always easy. Our kids see that it's hard.
And if they fall short, if it doesn't look like they're going to get their goal, it's possible that they set a goal that maybe was too high to actually achieve. So you maybe sit down with them and go over it again and say, what do we need to change here to make this?
Which actually leads us to step number 4. So that actually goes right into step number 4, which is reflect. So why are you frustrated? How did it go for you? You didn't quite hit your mark? That's okay. Don't worry about it. One of my least favorite quotes of all times is, you win some, you lose some. I really don't like that quote. And the way that I've always seen it is, you win some, you learn some. You're only losing if you're not learning. So when we think about step number 4 as reflect, to be able to look back and say, okay, so maybe I didn't get to score my soccer goal like I wanted to. That was my goal, which is it's a shifty goal, which we could talk about that in a different video. But it's more about how you're doing in the process of getting there. But you can look back and think about, well, what went well? What worked well for you today? What did you struggle with today? Well, what can you do better for next time? It's not that you lost. It's not that you failed. It's that you're learning, and that's great. That's growth. That's where this comes in. That's where the reflect process takes place.
Yeah. For me, a big part of reflect is daily or monthly, however often you're doing it, is as you go back and review. For me, it depends on what your goal is. But for right now, I have a goal this year to read the Book of Mormon every day. And if I were to never review, I am certain I would forget a few days here and there, and I'd be like, oh, it's okay. But as I review, I actually have a little calendar that I'm putting an X on. When I go back and review and I look at my calendar with all my X's, I'm like, oh, I cannot leave a hole on that X,
like this OCD.
Yes, I have to review it, right? I have to go look at that to say, I'm going to miss a day, I have to make sure I'm filling that X. So for me, for consistency, my goal is consistency in reading the Book of Mormon. And so in reviewing every day, it helps a lot to know that I've got something holding me accountable, and that's my perfect calendar with all my X's.
Would you feel like you failed if you woke up one day and you're sicker than a dog and you're just like, oh, I'm so sick, and you forget, and also the next day comes and you see that little hole in your calendar of checking it off? Do you feel like you failed? What do you do then?
Good point. That's a good point. No, you don't fail because things do happen, and they always will happen. But I think at that point, that's when you start over and you say, okay, I had a hole and there was good cause for that hole. I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to look at the rest of mine and continue to fill those in.
You're going to move forward, right? I think that's great.
You can't. If you keep looking back on that, you'll get depressed and you won't want to set any more goals. You just move forward, and we're always going to fall short a little bit in a goal. Some of them will be easy, and some of them you don't hit all the way. Like you'll hit part of it or most of it.
You'll get most of the way there, and you're like, oh, I fell just short, but that's normal. That's why we're learning. A
lot of that means you reflect and you go back and reset your goal and say, that was a little hard for me to
what can I do better?
Master a piece in such a short amount of time.
Awesome. So that's the 4-step process to getting your goal and to teaching your children and youth. And this is the process, the pattern for growth that the church has asked us to follow. And I've seen it happen. It's worked out with me as I've competed in the Olympics. One thing that I was going to share is just this helps you to form healthy habits. This whole process of discover, plan, act, review, or reflect, it helps you to form healthy habits. Even in those days when you don't want to do something or get something done. I remember in the planning stage, something that helped me to form a very good habit for working out is I would just lay my workout clothes out the night before, because then the next morning I already knew what I needed to do. I had planned, I had discovered what I wanted to do. Okay, here's my workout plan for the next 3 months. I planned by setting my workout clothes out and knowing exactly what my workout would be for the next day. I acted by waking up and not turning my alarm off and hitting the snooze button. I said, oh no, I've got my workout clothes out. I'm ready to go. I've got everything ready. My water bottle's right next to it. I'm ready to go. I'd get out of bed and I'd do it even if I didn't want to. It was cold. It was miserable. It was raining. It was snowing. Just wasn't what I wanted, but I knew I had to because I'd planned before and prepared my mind. I went and I acted, and after I worked out, I'd write down in a journal. We highly recommend keeping a journal about how you're doing and that reflection process. And if kids don't like to write things down, our 8-year-old really doesn't like to write things down, but he'd be good by saying, okay, I'm going to just do a quick little 30-second video. How did it go? What'd you think? How'd it go? Or what could you do better? Even doing a video documentation or something like that could help them to go back and look at it later on. That would be very helpful. And along this 4-step process, it's very, very critical that you inquire of the Lord throughout the whole thing. In the discover process, you'll get inspiration as you inquire of the Lord. You'll get inspiration as to what you should put on your discovery paper. And as you help your children to ask them, say, have you inquired of the Lord? Have you said your prayers? Ask him what you might be interested in doing. Help him to see your talents. He will do that. He'll help you through the planning process to be able to have people come to your mind, or resources come to your mind to say, oh, that would be actually, I think that might be helpful to do this, or to have that person help me. As we inquire of the Lord, he'll help us through the action process to keep us accountable. And we'll have that little thing saying, oh, don't put the snooze button. Oh, you said you wanted to do this. And I can testify that has happened to me many times. And then he will help us as we inquire of the Lord. He'll help us to reflect and to say, what can I do better? How did I do? What went well? And he'll help us to become even better so that we can have this pattern for growth in our lives.
Awesome. So big takeaways here are discover. I think for me, discover is the biggest one, because that's what gets you started. Yeah. If you don't ever do discover, it's going to be hard to set a goal, pick a goal, and do something to move towards. So learn to discover, and then just start planning and go.
Yep. Plan, act, reflect.
So they're all important, but discover is where you begin.
Awesome.
Okay, stay tuned.
Till next time.
See ya.